Hello, welcome back. Recapped Mystery here. Today, I'm going to explain an action science fiction film called Badland, Road to Fury. Watch out and take care. We observe a wide arid land at the start of the film. Jerome Home, a young man, tells us that he hasn't seen this area when it was green, but his father has. It was once home to several farmers who grew wheat and grains on it. However, since the drought, not a single plant has been able to grow. The majority of the farmers had fled, but Jerome's father, Ernest, hoped that the land would be green again. He still thinks it simply needs some water. In this planet, though, people kill each other for water. In the first scene, two muggers attempt to break into a little residence. Ernest apprehends and kills the first one. The second mugger tries to persuade him to spare his life, but he is slain when he surreptitiously pulls out a revolver. His son, Jerome, claims he could have assisted him. When Ernest tries to utilize the old water pump in the house the muggers were breaking into, it stops working. With no water left, the father and son ride a mule to the watermen, those who extract water from deep wells under a government contract. Ernest trades supplies for water with those individuals. For years, he has been pleading with them to provide him with water so that he can cultivate a little portion of his land. The watermen, on the other hand, only do it for the correct amount of money, which Ernest cannot afford. Their mule stumbles and fractures its leg on the way back. Ernest reluctantly kills the animal. The two return home to Jerome's sister, Mary, who serves them sack food. Because of the paucity of water, we witness Mary washing the dishes with soil. The next day, Jerome and Ernest go to Sam Lever's auction house to replace the deceased mule. A robotic transport machine dubbed Simulate Shadow, Sim, catches their attention there. Ernest triumphs at the auction over Flem Lever, who also happens to be Sam's son. Ernest and Jerome are unaware that Flem is having an affair with Mary. They then travel to see Catherine home, Jerome's ailing mother. She lives in a nearby hospital, where she is hooked to a unique frame and can walk. They are unable to carry her home because the frame is too pricey. That day, Jerome spends time with his mother. Ernest and Catherine kiss goodbye and part ways. Ernest and Jerome stop at a petrol station on their way back. Ernest takes a gulp of petrol after pumping it into his automobile. They come upon a couple with a small baby who is asking for water. The father, Robbie, wants to sell the kid because they can't afford to care for him, but Ernest convinces him not to and offers to help them with water. Robbie is aware of Flem and Mary's affair and alerts Ernest about it. Ernest confronts Mary about her frequent slipping out, but she maintains that it is her independence and tells her father that she despises him. She attempts to flee, but Ernest locks her in her room and screws the window shut. Ernest and Jerome awaken one morning to find some missing from its shed. It had been stolen. Ernest assumes it was Flem and travels to his house, only to learn from Sam that he had departed with a truck for the mountains that morning. Ernest then rushes to the watermen to hunt for him, but they knock him out. It is already night when he regains consciousness. He is accused of stealing their supplies by the watermen. Ernest denies stealing them, but their leader, Caleb, confronts him. They fight for a bit, but Ernest is able to get his hands on his rifle and go. On his way back home, he comes into Flem sleeping on the side of the road with some at his side. It is obvious that he stole the machine and the waterman's supplies. Ernest raises the rifle at him, kidnaps him, and ties him to the machine. He wishes to return Flem to the waterman in order to prove his innocence. On the way, Flem makes remarks about Mary that irritate Ernest. Both of them become thirsty after a time of walking. Ernest is persuaded to use the water from the waterman's supply by Flem. The two sit down to talk and sip water. Flem then tries to persuade Ernest to let him go so they can split the money, but Ernest is adamant about catching him. Ernest is frail and limping. He can't possibly travel another mile to the waterman. Flem is aware of this, so he hits Ernest with a stone, causing him to hit his head on a cliff. His skull begins to bleed excessively, and he is rendered unconscious. Ernest awakens to find himself shackled instead of Flem. As Ernest yells, Flem pours water into his mouth. Later, we see Flem arriving on his motorbike at Ernest's house to pick up Mary. She runs out to greet him. Ernest hasn't returned home yet, so Jerome goes out to look for him. On the way, he comes upon the machine by himself. When he arrives at the waterman, he learns of Ernest's death, Everyone believes it was caused by the machine. In the following scene, we see everyone at Ernest's funeral mourning his passing. Catherine and the kids later sob in her hospital bed. Flem picks them up in his truck when they come out. Following Ernest's death, Flem has taken on the role of family mentor. He calms Jerome down while hitting Sim for murdering his father. Later, he informs him that Mary is expecting his child and that he adores her. Jerome is content with their partnership. Later that day, Flem talks to the waterman about providing water to Ernest's land. Caleb laughs at his proposal, but becomes defensive when Flem accuses him of being responsible for Ernest's death. Flem also shows him a knife with Caleb's name written on it that was discovered with Ernest's body. Caleb agrees to divert water to their field because he is afraid of being blamed. When the ground receives its first sprinkling of water, everyone rejoices. Flem works all hours of the day and night to cultivate wheat on the farm. They are completely grown a few months later. Flem marries Mary and now lives at Ernest's house with Jerome and Mary. One day, his father, Sam, arrives at their residence with some bank employees, threatening to seize the land due to Ernest's debt. Flem cannot pay the debt, so he takes the machine with him and approaches his friend Robbie that night. He is aware of Robbie's desire to sell his child, so he convinces Robbie to accompany him just to see how much a baby can be worth. When they arrive, Robbie discovers that Flem has secretly arranged a deal with the folks to sell his baby. When the people try to take the infant away from Robbie, he fights back and is shot dead by Flem. This results in a gunfight between the dealers, and Flem flees with the money. However, the machine is fired and ruined. This triggers the machine's auto mode, causing it to return to its manufacturer, Calvin Human. The following day, Flem pays the bank with the proceeds from the sale of the child. No one suspects anything because Jerome assumes the money came from selling Sim. Sim is seen hobbling its way back to Calvin, who lives over the border. In the next scene, Calvin dials the number engraved on Sim and arrives at Holmes' house. He tells Jerome about the machine returning to him, which surprises Jerome because Flem informed him he sold it to Robbie. Jerome asks Flem if Robbie sold Sim's components and they made it to the owner, but Flem gets upset with him and rejects the topic. Then he tells them he'll meet his mother that evening, but instead he'll cross the border to meet Calvin, Sim's manufacturer. He eventually arrives at the border, but the officer stops him since he is too young to cross. A girl named Anna approaches him and tells him she knows how he can get to the other side. She puts him in a car with hens and sends him over in exchange for money. They meet again on the other side and then part ways. Then Jerome goes to see Calvin. Calvin demonstrates all of the machine's functions to him there. He also demonstrates that the machine's eyes are cameras designed to capture the slope for replanting. The camera has recorded everything the machine has observed. Jerome listens to the recordings and recalls his time with Ernest. As he reads it, he is shocked to discover that Flem was the one who murdered Ernest. After Ernest regained consciousness, Flem strapped him to the machine and directed it to the waterman. Ernest, who was hurt but alive, had been dragged to his death by the machine. Jerome's eyes well up with tears by the end of the video. He returns home in the evening but does not confront Flem about anything. Flem and Jerome go deer hunting one day, and Jerome keeps the rifle with him, storing it under his bed for the future. Jerome informs Flem about Robbie calling him over breakfast. Flem is taken aback and accuses Jerome of lying, knowing that Robbie is already dead. Flem then receives a letter sent by Jerome under the alias Robbie. The letter requests that Flem meet Robbie at the same location where he murdered Ernest. He is perplexed by this, but decides to find out if Robbie is still alive. Later that night, Flem informs a pregnant Mary that he must leave to sell something. Mary wishes him success and invites him to return soon. When Flem arrives at the location, he summons Robbie. He falls over a pit while walking and breaks both of his legs. When Jerome comes in front of him, he is lying there pleading for aid. Flem breathes a sigh of relief as he sees him and pleads for his assistance. Jerome, on the other hand, is holding a rock. Flem realizes he knows what occurred and apologizes to him, stating it was an accident. He begs Jerome to spare his life for Mary and their kid, but he refuses. He points the weapon at Flem and kills him. It's been 2 days since the incident. Mary is concerned about her spouse, but Jerome requests that she wait a little longer. He has decided to withhold both Ernest's and Flem's deaths from Mary. Mary advises that they bring their mother home because they now have enough money to pay for the ringing system in which she lives. The film concludes with Jerome erasing Sim's video memory. Please subscribe to assist the channel, turn on notification and leave a like. Thank you for taking the time to watch. See you again soon.